So, hello everyone. Today is the fifth day of Exploration Week, and today we are going to start the most awaiting chapter of this journey, the geopolitics. So, this is Ronit Singh, and today we'll be analyzing the consequences and the history of Russia Ukraine war and the Israel Hamas conflict. So, first of all, let me wish you a very happy Diwali for all the Indians and for all the other students who have joined this workshop. May this Diwali bring you the prosperous happiness and joy forever. So, the first question: what is geopolitics? What is the basic understanding of geopolitics? Many people relate geopolitics with religion, many people relate geopolitics with cultural differences, but it's not like that. Basically, the geopolitics depends upon two factors: the geography, and the other thing is what is the trade benefit from one country to the another. The basic, first of all, you need to know that what is geopolitics. Geopolitics is not a very complex topic at its basic understanding. It just means that what is the relation between two countries or two communities. Earlier we don't used to have very specific countries like before the 19th century, but now we have specific countries with specific borders. So the basic understanding of geopolitics is that what are the relationship criteria, what are the judgment parameters on which two countries have their relationships fixed on the terms of trade, on the terms of health, on the terms of education. What are they doing for the support of one another? Okay. So today, for this year, I think one of the most hot topics in the area of geopolitics is Ukraine-Palestine war and the Israel-Hamas war. Sorry, not Ukraine-Palestine, Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas or the Israel-Palestine conflict. So both of them, many people, I would say, 99 people out of 100 would relate that. First of all, we'll talk about the Israel and Palestine conflict or the Israel Hamas conflict, whatever you would like to say. So many people would like to convey that no, Israel and Palestine conflict is a religious conflict between the Muslims and the Jews, but it's a wrong opinion according to me. There are many geopolitics who would relate it with religion, but I don't support to that extent this thought. First of all, you need to understand that what is why there is a war between Israel and Hamas, and what is the role of the United States in this scene. So first of all, you need to know that Israel has a very strategic location which serves it as a bridge between Europe and Middle East and West Asia. It has a very strategic location for the United States to make a complete control in the Middle East. First of all, we need to know that. And then the next thing is that if you have a control in the Middle East part, then you would have control over the oil, which is the most significant energy for the 21st century. And people are realizing, and US has realized it way before, I would say just after the World War II, when it came to know that we need energy to have wars. They started searching oil, and with when they got oil in the Middle East, they started investing heavily in the Middle East, be it Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, or any other country in the Middle East which has surplus amount of oil. So Israel is a very strategic location for the United States of America, and so United States of America and NATO supports heavily to Israel in this case. First of all, you need to know that why today Jews are settled in that particular area, why there is not any other corner in the world for Israel to settle down there. Uh, First of all, you need to know that there was a World Zionist Organization. World Zionist Organization was an organization founded by the Jews to make a country for their own people. And it had some very influential people like Albert Einstein, who I think had also served as the president of the World Zionist Organization. Sorry if I'm wrong. I'm not clear at this point of time, but I think that he was not the president, but he was a very influential people. He was one of the most influential people in that organization who spread the idea of Zionism. Zionism is an ideology spread by the Jews, which means that we need to move back where we started. Okay. And if I take you to the 10th century, it just means that the area where today Israel is placed, it was originally for the Jews, but not exactly. Okay. Jews used to live there in the 10th century, but not like I would say they had a very short span of time where they lived at this point of time, but they had two temples in that specific area, in that specific location, which was destroyed by the Romans. Okay. And when the Romans destroyed it, they shifted to they migrated, I would not shifted, they migrated to other parts of the world, be it Europe was their first choice, and after that they started moving to some other locations also, including India. There are some Jews in India also who settled way before 1900s. Okay. So they started moving to this place. Now when now the demand of let me make you more clear how this World Zionist organization started. Okay. So just before Jews used to be very rich, they were very intelligent people, they were very rich people. So they started the World Zionist organization in order to find their own country, in order to find their own place. Okay. Because and after that what happened, now let me take you to the story of First World War. Listen, I'm stammering a bit, that doesn't mean that I'm confused in the topic, but it's just like that. Israel Hamas or Israel Palestine is a very complicated topic which has different parameters from which it needs to be studied, and it has different chapters. Like it has a chapter of pre World War One, then it has a chapter of post World War One, then it has a chapter of pre World War Two, and then it has a chapter of post World War Two, then it has the United Nations. So you need to move in a very simple manner, you need to try to move in a very simple manner, but it's not possible. Okay. So first of all, we need to understand that I made you clear that during the 10th century they had a temple. They a bit they had settled down in that area. They made their temple, but Romans destroyed that temple and used, and even they used the bricks to make other infrastructure in that area, so that there would be no traces of history in that area for the Jews. After that, they moved to Europe and other parts of the world. After this, everything took a stop, but like in the 1900s, it again started with the World Zionist organization, when Jews became influential, and they got money in their hand, just because the new middle class has emerged in Europe. So this was the basic understanding, that when you get a money in your hand, you get a mind to think, you get a mind to explore a lot. Okay. So Jews founded the World Zionist organization. Now what is the meaning of Zionist? Zionist means to move back where we started. Okay. To move back where we started. So where from they have started from the area of the Middle East, or from the area where Jerusalem is placed today. Let me think, let me see if I have a map. No, I don't have the map right now, but let me see if I can relate it with to you. No, I don't have the map right now. So no worries. You can just imagine, if you have seen the world map, you can easily relate with that. That what from where they have started, they have the history traced from Jerusalem or the Middle East. Okay, so they thought they decided to move back where they have started. They started investing heavily, because that area has a very barren land, and the cost of the land is very low, and they had huge money in their hands. So they packed up everything from Europe, and they started investing in um, the Palestine area, or whatever we say. It was not Palestine then, it was an area, it was a location under the Ottoman Empire just before the World War One. Okay. They started investing, they started buying land in that area, but they were not in a very dense manner. It was not a very dense population for the Jews. And during when the World War One started, the World Zionist Organization uh, asked mutual help from Britain, that if Britain defeats Ottoman Empire with the help of Jews, then that area would be allocated to the Jews, and they would be allowed to make their own country for the Jews. Okay, but what happened? Jews helped them in monetary funds. They helped them with the soldiers. But after, due to some conflicts post World War One, Britain delayed this. Britain started delaying this agreement, and they were not ready to accept uh, and they were not ready to accept the Jews to make their own country. So there was a tussle, I would say there was a tussle between the Britain and the World Zionist Organization. Till then, Israel was not anywhere in the scene. Neither Palestine was there in the scene, nor Israel was on the scene. Okay, so what happened, like, just after that, they started having talks with the British government. They started to protest, but there was not any significant change in the scene. There was no significant change in the political scenario at that time. And as you know that when Adolf Hitler came into power in Germany, he started suppressing, he started mass killings of Jews, Polish, and all the other ethnicities except the Nordic Aryan Germans, sorry. Except the Nordic Aryan Germans, he started mass killings, mass destruction of properties, mass destructions of killings, mass killings of all the other ethnicities except the Nordic Aryan Germans. It included Jews, Polish. Over more than 2 crore Jews were killed during the Hitler era. They were sent into the concentration camps. They were inserted in the gas chambers, and they were killed with poisonous gases, because Hitler had a thinking that only the blonde hair and the blue eye color people have the right to live in this world, and no other mixed blood can live in this world. Excuse me. So after this, what happened when the world now come to the scene of post World War II? Okay, now when the world came to know about the mass killings and the atrocities, and what were the consequences of Hitler on the Jewish people, there was a huge, I would say, shift of emotions towards the Jewish people all around the world. Okay, people from all around the world almost started to support the Jews, that no, they were suppressed, they had nothing in their hand, they were always suppressed from the history, be it the Romans, be it the Ottoman Empire, be it the Hitler. They almost all of them have suppressed the Jews. And after that, and after the World War II, Jews got their country, but the main problem started from this scene. Okay, now if you look at the map of Israel and Palestine, there is a huge problem. Like there were some inhabitants in that area who were considered as Arabs. Okay, now all the Arabs are not Muslims, and all the Muslims are not Arabs. There were a few Arabic people. Okay, there were a few Arabic people who were the inhabitants, or we would say herders. Okay, they were the cattle herders in that area, because agriculture is not possible in that location, in that land. So there were, now from this scene the conflict started, where those people will go if we make a specific country for the Jews. Now when this problem arised, now this problem needed to be solved, and this was the first issue which was handled, which was given to the United Nations in 1947. Okay, in 1947, this was the first issue which was given to the United Nations. Now the United Nations did what I would say British did in India before the partition. They made a map, they made the borderline where the Palestinians were dense in number. That area was allocated as a Palestine to the Muslims, or to the inhabitants of that area, and the Jews and the Jews were they were dense in number. That area was called as Israel. Okay, and the capital Jerusalem was under the control of United Nations. Now, what is the importance of Jerusalem? Jerusalem is a very important place in the world because it is the religious center of three religions. First of all, for the Muslims, the Al-Aqsa Masjid is in Jerusalem. The Al-Aqsa Masjid is significantly important after the Makkah and Medina. Okay. The second is the church. There is the Holy Church of the Christians, which is believed, where it is believed that Jesus was born in that area. Uh, some people suggest that no, Jesus was not born in that area. He was I guess some people feel that. So okay, Khyati is saying that it's interesting. Thank you so much, Khyati. So okay, now let's come back to the topic. Some people believe that most of the people, actually there are also different sects in the Christianity. So many people think that Jesus was born in that place, so there is a specific church. That's why it's also important. And for the Jews, the temple which was destroyed, only one wall was left, and that wall is worshipped even today by the Jews. So it's a very significant place for for the Jews, for the Muslims, and for the Christians. Okay, so that city was taken under control by the United Nations. Now, what happened that it was the time when United States has had lost the battle with Vietnam, and now there comes the war. From here the war starts. Okay, Egypt and Jordan are Muslim dominated countries, and at that time they had the rule of Muslim leaders, and they didn't like Israel. They didn't want that anyone other should enter that area which doesn't belongs to them. By the perspective, when I would say neighboring countries of Israel have their own perspective, they don't consider Israel as a country because they don't consider Israelis or the Jews as their own people, because they have migrated 1,000 years before. uh, so they are not considered as the inhabitants of the Middle East by most of the Muslim countries. Okay, or the Organization of Islamic Countries, which we refer as OIC. Even our neighboring country Pakistan doesn't recognize Israel as a country. Neither they have listed Israel on their passport. Okay, so these are some of the. So what happened just after this agreement was that Israel, Jordan, and Egypt and Syria planned to attack Israel just after the day of independence. But as we know that Israel has always been a very strategic country, and they know how to deal with a problem. They were very well aware that we are surrounded by enemies. We are not surrounded by our friends. We are not surrounded by our favoring countries. They won't do any favor to us because they are Muslim dominated people. That was not the reason. The reason was, I am again saying, this perspective was inserted into the minds of common people that we are fighting for the Muslims. But the main reason was that the Organization of Islamic Countries didn't want the United States of America to settle in that area. Okay, now this is the conflict. This was the thought inserted by by the Muslim countries, that we are fighting for the justice of Muslims, but they were not interested any, not even 0.001%, they were not interested in Muslims. They were just interested to remove United States from that part. Okay, this was the main agenda. This was the main agenda of United of the Islamic countries. So they waged a war against. Israel, but because Vietnam War had just ended, Israel planned everything way before their independence. They were very well aware that we are going to have a war. Okay, so just after this, what happened was, uh, as I mentioned earlier, that Jews are very intelligent people. They had some of the best commanders in the European army. They called them to their land. They took the weapons in a very cheap price, at a very cheap price from Vietnam, and they trained their soldiers in a very specific manner according to their geography, according to their landscape, and they won the battle. They defeated almost four countries in the first Arab-Israeli war. After that, there were a series of war, and if I start talking about that, it would take almost 2 hours. There was the 7 day Arab-Israeli war, okay, where Israel defeated seven countries in 7 days. So there is a very long series of wars. If I start talking about that, it would take a huge time. It would take like hours and hours, and it won't end because it has very intricate details, like how each country participated in this war, how each country got into this conflict. So it's a very complex topic if I talk about that war period. But there were just wars, and the only result of these wars was that Palestine was losing their land and Israel was gaining more and more land. Just this was the basic result, the basic consequences of all these wars was just that Israel was becoming a significant part in this world. Okay, it was taking its own stance. So after this, what happened? Now let's move to around 1980s. Okay, now people in the Palestine area came to know, realize that we won't be able to prove ourselves as a country with war. Okay, because during the 1980s, other countries also were also not interested in wars a lot with Israel, because till then Israel was a very significant supporter of United States, and it had the mutual support of United States and the complete North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries. Okay, so what happened after this? In during the 1980s, there was an organization formed in the Palestine region, which was known as the Palestine Liberation Organization. And this organization was headed by Yasser Arafat. There was a leader named Yasser Arafat who led this organization known as the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLO. In the starting, PLO was considered as a terrorist organization, but if we take a few years, but as it gained momentum, and Yasser Arafat was a very influential leader in the world, was one of the very influential leader. So slowly and gradually, what happened that PLO gained its influence, gained its popularity as an organization and not as a terrorist organization, which was portrayed by the Israeli country, by Israel, sorry, but not by the Israeli country, by Israel. Okay, so this was the thing. And Yasser Arafat was a very, I would say, cunning leader, or he was very smart, because he knew that there is only one solution. Because Jews were influential, they had, first of all, Jews were influential, they had money in their hand, they had people in other countries also. If you saw the movie Oppenheimer, Henry Oppenheimer was also a Jew. Okay, so there were many people who were Jews, and they had very significant positions in other countries also. So Yasser Arafat was a very smart person, and he came to know that there was no solution and there was no way that we can take control of the complete area. There is only one solution for the Palestine, and that was the two nation theory was the only solution for them. Okay, and now if you see the map of Israel and Palestine, there are two significant areas of Palestine. The first one is called the West Bank, and the second one is called the Gaza Strip. Okay, so West Bank is an area between, surrounded by land from all the four sides. It is surrounded by Israeli land. Okay, and the Gaza Strip is surrounded by the Israeli land from only two sides, and one side is bordered with Egypt, and it has, I guess, it has a water board. It has a I guess it has a water a borderline of around 14 kilometers. Okay, So this is the complete landscape of the Gaza Strip. Now, if you start talking about the Gaza Strip, now what happened? Yasser Arafat and the Israeli president made an agreement that okay, two nation theory would be the only solution, and would be the only solution, and we will be having will be having elections, we'll be selecting our own prime ministers, and there would be a confluence between both the governments, the Israeli government and the Palestinian government. But what happened? This agreement was signed, but there are radicalists in every community. There are extremists in every country who didn't like this idea. Many people in the Palestine Liberation Organization didn't like this idea, and they were just against this ideology. So they started criticizing Yasser Arafat's idea. Okay, and soon after that, a different sect cut off from the PLO, and it was known as the Hamas. Okay, so Hamas critically criticized Yasser Arafat and PLO, and they were saying that no, Yasser Arafat is a very cunning person and he did wrong with the Palestinians. Palestinians believed him and he betrayed him. Okay, and thereafter Yasser Arafat was assassinated by the Hamas terrorists. Okay, and after that, I guess Yasser Arafat also received the Nobel Prize because uh, let me tell you, this is one of the most complex topics in today's world. You cannot solve it from one perspective because it has, as I mentioned earlier, it has several chapters from which it needs to be studied. Okay, so if you can't tell it from a one perspective or from one view, that what could be the solution. And the Israeli president was also killed. I don't remember the exact name of the Israeli president actually, and I was what was his name? I don't remember. He was also assassinated by the Israeli extremist group because some of the extremists in Israel also believed that the president had betrayed the people of Israel, and they were not ready to believe in the two nation theory. Okay, many people in Israel don't believe in the two nation theory. They just believe that Israel is a country for the Jews and no one has the right to intrude in the matter or in the land of Israel. This is one of the specific ideologies which has been inserted by the foundational characters of this story. Okay, now let me take you a bit more forward. Now, what happened is that Hamas portrayed itself as a now when Hamas was separated from PLO, Hamas gained its control over the Gaza Strip and it had over no influence over the West Bank. Okay, till today, West Bank has the influence of only and only the Palestine Liberation Organization. Hamas has no control over the West Bank. It has only the control of the Gaza Strip. Okay, that is the reason why today there is a war in the Gaza Strip and not a war in the West Bank. Let me make you this thing clear. Okay, and in the Gaza Strip there is no influence, I would say no influence, not negligible influence even, because there is no influence of the Palestine Liberation Organization in the in the Gaza Strip, sorry, in the Gaza Strip. Okay, now this is the complete history of Israel and Palestine in 30 minutes. Now if I take more time, it could even stretch up to 10 to 12 hours, but I made you clear the complete history and what is the reason. Okay, what is the reason of conflict in this region. Okay, now what did you get from this topic? Don't ever think that there is a conflict in two countries just based on religion. The world leaders have portrayed this thing, they have inserted this thing into the minds of the common people that you have been uh, they want to divide you, that you have been just listen, there is always a perspective which is built by the world leaders to gain their popularity. They always want their popularity to be at a higher level and to keep people on their side. Okay, Now, if I take you to the darker side of geopolitics, now understand this thing. Come to 2 years back, okay, not 2 years back, just 6 months back, there was a huge protest for Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the current prime minister of Israel. Okay, there was a huge protest for him. He was dragged into court, and there was several corruption charges on him, and he was at his lowest point of what would I say, popularity. Okay, so at this point, a lot of things were going on with the Israeli prime minister, and as we know that Israel has a very strong intelligence agency, which is known as the Mossad. Okay, so Mossad is an agency which has spies in every part of the or in every corner of the world. Now, you just think for a bit, you don't even know that what is happening in your near border. Is it possible for Mossad that they were not aware of the fact that from Gaza Strip, Hamas is going to attack 5,000 bombs? Is it possible? Do you think is it possible? No, it is not possible. Even the Central Intelligence Agency CIA was aware of this fact that Hamas was going to wage a war against Israel on their day of festival. But this thing was not eliminated. Why? Just because of the mere politics by the world leaders. Okay, so if you think from this perspective, what happened now? When Hamas waged a war against Israel, the complete Israel came into the control of the complete Israel became unified. All the people of Israel became unified, and they came with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and his popularity again boomed up. Okay, so this is the dark side of geopolitics, which is never discussed before, which would never be discussed in public. Do you think that two of the best secret agencies in the world won't know anything about what is happening in the Gaza Strip? Is it possible? Just think with your mind. It is a common sense thing that two of the world's best intelligence agency won't know anything about the war. Is it possible? No. Okay, so this is the mere politics which is played in today's world. So never think, my first tip to you, if you are interested in geopolitics, never have a perspective of religious at the first stance in any conflict. At the first stance, or at the first instance, don't think that there is a war because of cultural differences. Okay, there is never a war because of cultural differences. There is always a war for the profit of the countries or the superpowers who are playing this game. Okay, so let me tell you, this war is not going to stop in a day or two. There won't be any ceasefires for now, because Benjamin Netanyahu wants his popularity to again be at the boom, to again be at the highest point, and is not going to stop the war. Neither United States is interested in stopping this war, because they are selling their weapons to both Israel and Hamas. But many people won't accept the fact that Hamas is getting the weapons from United States. They would instead argue that they are getting the weapons from Iran. Okay, Iran and Iraq, mostly Iran is supplying them the weapons. But let me tell you, the biggest exporter of weapons in this world is the United States of America. Okay, so this is the complete perspective of the Israel and Hamas, or the Israel Palestine conflict. Okay, now what is the humanitarian impact of this thing? There are several children who died, I would say, or who were killed by the Israeli defense forces in this region, in the Gaza Strip region. Many women lost their lives. Several buildings were bombarded, because of which many children were sleeping and they didn't awake ever. So there is no loss for anyone. There is only one loss, and that is the loss of humanity. Humanity is at a very high stake. We have built a world which is unsafe at every corners. There is no corner in this world where you can feel safe. If you consider United States, there had been 9/11. If you consider Israel, there are always security breaches. There are always terrorist attacks. If you consider Europe, there has always been a danger of Russia. If you consider some of Syria, if you consider Iraq, there have been terrorist organizations which are killing and which are killing thousands of people, which are if you consider Afghanistan, there had been a war where where the Ashraf Ghani's government was overthrown and Taliban overtook the rule. Okay, so people should know that there is no war just based on religious differences. There is only and only trade for the rich and superpower countries. Now let's move part two. Okay, so part two is a Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, this war is not also Russia-Ukraine. This is Russia versus Europe or Russia versus NATO. Okay, the main agenda, if you talk on this war, is the warm water policy. Peter the Great was a very great diplomat who gave the warm water policy. Now, what is this warm water policy? The warm water policy suggests that if Russia has control over the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea, then only it would have the control of Europe and Central Asia to trade. Again, there is the same case of trade. Excuse me. Now, if you take the case, let's suppose that today Ukraine becomes a member of the NATO. What would happen? The consequences would be that there would be NATO forces in the Baltic Sea and Black Sea, which would encounter Russia and the Russian ships at any point of time. Okay, there would be it would be a very problematic situation for Russia to trade to Central Asia and to Europe, because the upper part of the ocean is always almost covered by ice for almost 6 months. I would say for 6 months the upper part of Russia is almost covered with ice and there is no waterway. The only two waterways are possible for Russia is from the Black Sea and from the Baltic Sea. Okay, now if Ukraine becomes the member now if Ukraine becomes the member of now, if Ukraine becomes the member of NATO, please keep this thing in mind. Russia would lose its significance. Russia would lose its significance. Russia would be lost anywhere. Now, you would say that Russia is the only biggest country in the world. Then how would it be lost? I'm not saying literally it would be lost, but that country won't be able to survive anymore because it has to trade. It is such a large country, it has to trade. And if the warm water policy gets failed just because of Ukraine becoming a member of NATO, Russia won't take this thing. Russia won't support Ukraine anytime in the future. Russia won't support any at any instance to Ukraine. Okay. Now this was one of the reasons, the trade. Now again, the second reason is the mere politics. Okay. Now let me tell you. In 2014, okay, 2014 was a time when there was a huge protest again for Vladimir Putin. Okay, and the protest was so huge that again it touched the lowest point of popularity for Vladimir Putin. Okay, and there was no solution left, and it was supposed that at any point of time Vladimir Putin would be thrown away. Okay, so always the world leader, beat any world leader, they always have a perspective that they want to survive, they want to be in power, they want to be the superpower. Okay, so what it was 2014. Now it is a conspiracy theory, it is a conspiracy theory that Vladimir Putin bombarded his own locations, his own country, and it portrayed that there was some terrorist or there was some radical groups who penetrated from the region of Crimea, which was then under control of Ukraine. Okay, so this made all the people of Russia, all the Russians, this made all the Russians unified, and they took the step and they were standing with Vladimir Putin, which again gave a boom to his popularity. And after that, Putin retaliated with his Chechnya military group, which killed almost more than 50,000 people in the Crimea region. Okay, and in 2014 again, And in 2014, the complete control of Crimea was taken from Ukraine, and it was under Russia. At that point of time, also the European powers had put sanctions on Russia, but yes, it made a economic loss at that point of time for Russia, but for a long term, it was a lot beneficial because Crimea was a region which gave them weight for the Black Sea and to the Central Asia. Okay, this was a very strategic location for Russia to trade in Central Asia. Okay, this is the reason, and even one of its other another neighboring country, which is Georgia, also tried to become a member of NATO, which was bombarded by Russia because Russia would never want that his enemy should shit on his head. Okay, now, again in 2019, when Vladimir Zelensky came into power in Ukraine, he wanted to become the member of NATO. Okay, I talked for almost 40 minutes. Oh God. So what happened is that the east region, if you talk about the east region of Ukraine, it is majorly Russian inclined population. Okay, the west region, which includes the Luhansk and the Donetsk region, it is majorly inclined towards the Russian ideology and towards the Russian government, while the west region is majorly inclined towards the Western powers or towards Europe. Okay, so as this mindset evolved, there were two different leaders, and the leader Volodymyr Zelensky, who supports the Western Europe ideology, came into power, and he showed that we are interested in becoming the member of North Atlantic Treaty Organizations. Okay, now, again, it made an alarm in the ears of Vladimir Putin that if Zelensky becomes the member, if Ukraine becomes the member of, if Ukraine becomes the member of NATO, it would again be a threat for Russia's dominance over the world. Okay, this was the reason why they waged a war. Now, you would say that Russia is having a war with Ukraine from almost 1.5 year, and it is going to be in another 5 to 6 months. It would be 2 years, and there won't be any ceasefire till then. Okay, let me tell you this thing. Now, what is why Russia is having such an expensive war? First of all, Russia has huge weapons. It has a huge collection of weapons which were just getting wasted, I would say. So it has no fear of getting scared of ammunitions. Let me tell you this fact. After this, Russia is at a profit of $1 trillion. Let me tell you this thing, because they are selling their oil through China and India. Both of the major countries in Asia are buying Russia's oil, and they are supplying again that particular oil to the Western countries and to Europe. Okay, so there is no differences, so there is no difference in a trade, just there is an indirect trade for now between Europe and between Russia through via China and India. Okay, so this is the complete perspective. Harsh. Now, if you have a look at, let me tell you now from this perspective. What was I going to say? I just forgot. Uh, Yeah. Hmm. Now, if you think with the most important part, which I was going to forget, who uh, who is wrong at this conflict? Who is uh, who should be considered as the war criminal? Okay, who should be considered as the war criminal from a diplomatic view, not from a ideological view, I would say, but from a diplomatic view. Whom would you consider as an traitor? Okay, so just think at once. Why would Ukraine wage a war against a superpower? Because Ukraine is relatively lower than that. Then also it waged a war, and then also it is then also Ukraine is fighting with Russia till date. What is the reason? Because at before the war started, Russia had a belief that the Western powers would support him with full potential, with full potential. Keep this thing in mind. Ukraine was very confident that it would be supported by the Western powers with full confidence, with full potential. But as the war started, Europe took its foot back. What was the reason? The reason was economic loss. The reason was the economy was down due to COVID. They were not ready to accept the war, because if they would have accepted the war with full potential, Europe would have lost everything. Today, Europe is at a very high rate of inflation, and it has a very and it has a very I would say low point in terms of GDP. Okay, so this was the reason why Europe was not in is not involved in this war with full potential. Not even America is supporting with its full 100% potential. America never took its 100% potential in a war at the starting. Okay, America has always been in a very indirect war, and they have always supported two different groups from a very different perspective, I would say. So this is the thing which needs to be understood by the people of Ukraine and by the Ukrainian government. The Ukrainian government should have realized that there is no one for them to support. And Russia is such a country that if Russia once, once Russia had said that if there is no Russia, there should be no world. There should be no world without Russia. ठीक है? इन हिंदी, अगर रूस नहीं है तो रूस के अलावा कोई दुनिया भी नहीं होनी चाहिए. ठीक है? So this was the statement given by the president of Russia, who is Vladimir Putin. So for now, again, I would say that this war is not going to stop till date. I would say this war is again this war will continue for almost 2 years, according to me. But again, the loss is only for the humanity and for none. This was the complete story of the two conflicts around the world right now. So, in conclusion, I would say that never ever, if you are a geopolitics fan, never ever think only from one perspective. Always have an unbiased opinion and always have an unbiased approach to study the geopolitics. Okay, always have this thing in your mind that if you are ready to study geopolitics, you need to be unbiased, and you need to have a very a diverse perspective. You should not think from a very confined perspective. You should think from a very diverse perspective. Okay, geopolitics will never be a story of only religious conflicts. Yes, religious conflict is a part of the story, is a part of the conflict, but it won't be always the same thing. Okay, religious conflicts are never ever the same thing. It won't be ever. So at last, I would say, first of all, you need to know the history of a place. If there is any geopolitics history, you need to know the historical facts behind that thing. Okay, this is my first unbiased advice to you, that if you are studying about any conflict, about any geopolitical issue, you need to know the historical facts. You need to know the historical background at first, that why this conflict had started, what were the reasons of this conflict, for what it started. Okay, what second thing, you if there is any conflict in any part of the world, geopolitics is not only about war, but I am keeping it close to war, because our today's topic is war. Okay, and if you are talking about any of the conflicts in geopolitics, study the geography. Again, for example, the main problem with Russia is that they don't have any geographical barrier towards the European side. Okay, unlike India, they have unlike India, they have unlike India, they don't have any Himalayas. we are having Himalayas, and that is a very, I would say, advantage. That is a very advantageous feature given by the nature to us, given by the nature to India. Okay, because if you are having a geographical barrier, it makes difficult for your enemies to attack on you. Okay, so my first advice to you is that first you read the historical background, the historical facts of the conflict. My second advice is to you to read about the geography. Okay, geography plays a huge important role in shaping a conflict, in shaping a war. Okay, this was the reason why why America lost the control over Afghanistan. This was the reason why USSR lost its control over Afghanistan. So you need to study the geography in order to understand the conflict in an particular corner of the world. My third step is what I did say to you, that never ever think at the first instance that religious is a reason for war. It has been portrayed by the world leaders, it has been portrayed by the media that religion is a reason for war. It is never like that. It is never ever like that, that religion would be a reason for war. My fourth tip to you would be that always think from an always think from an unbiased perspective. Never think from the side of any one of the participants of the war, or from any one of the participants of the conflict. Always have an unbiased approach, and always have an I would say diverse perspective to see a particular topic. Okay, because if you have a diverse perspective, then only you would come to know about the things which are going behind the scene. Okay, there are many things which go behind the scene. There are very mere politics, there are very cruel and very dark side of geopolitics also, which you would know, which you would come to know later in your life when you study geopolitics deeply and intricately. Then also, then only you would be able to come to know about these things. Okay, so always have this thing in your mind, that you should have a very diverse perspective when you are studying geopolitics. Again, I would say geopolitics is not only about wars. Our today's topic was war, that's why I discussed everything related to war, but it has a huge I would say branches. It has huge branches to be studied. It has environment, it has trade, it has wars, and many other topics. It has bilateral relations, it has neighboring countries conflicts. Okay, so you need to know. And my last tip is that never think that a country is your for example, never think, let me make it more clear to you without giving an example. None of the countries is an enemy or a friend for any of the other country. Okay, they are just having their own benefits. If they are sharing their benefits, only then they are having their friendship. If there are no benefits, there he one country is an enemy of the other. Okay, today America is having an interest in India, that is why America and India are friends. Okay, before 1990, before 2000s, America was the same country who had put sanctions on India just because of the Pokhran nuclear test. Okay, America was the same country who had deployed its warships in the 71 war. Okay, so you need to know that in geopolitics, no one is your friend, no one is your enemy. It is just based on interest and benefits. Okay, today, America needs the support of one country to counter Russia and China. Okay, so today America is with India. Now let's take the example of Russia. Okay, everyone in India there is a huge opinion that Russia is a very good friend, and Russia is a very true friend of India. Let me tell you one thing, that if there is a war with China, Russia won't come to support you. Why would Russia come to support you when Russia is having a trade with China? As I mentioned earlier, that Russia is having trade with China and India. If India and China are on war, then why would it harm its trader? Why would it harm its exporter? Make this thing clear in your mind that if Russia is having a trade, Russia is having a trade with China, then why would it harm its beneficial part? You should know this thing. Okay, so have a very diverse perspective. In India, there is a very common ideology that Russia is a true friend. Russia is your true friend only because of your strategic location. Russia is your true friend only because we had an agreement before the 1971 war. Okay, Russia is only your friend because you're buying before you used to buy 90% of the weapons from Russia. Now you buy 60% of your weapons from Russia. This is the reason why Russia is your true friend. Okay, why Russia is your true friend. Now let's take the case of India, for example. Many of Indians say that Afghanistan and India has very good relations. What is the reason? The reason is that we need to counter Pakistan from two sides. The first front is the Indian side, and the second front is the Afghanistan front. And again, with the perspective of trade, Afghanistan has a very great strategic location with the pathway to the Central Asia for trade. You need to know this thing, that if you want to trade in the Central Asia, you need to have a control. You need to have a control in Afghanistan in order to trade. Okay, so you need to know this thing, that always, if two countries are friend, there is some interest behind them. And if two countries are enemies, there is a reason. There is a reason why they are because they are fighting for a particular interest. Again, वॉर बिना मतलब की नहीं होती है कभी भी. Wars are never waged uselessly. Okay, wars are only waged when you have a specific business purpose, when you have a very specific profit purpose. World War I, World War II, the Cold War, all these wars were just fought for the trade purposes, for their dominance. And what would be the consequences of your dominance? The consequences of your dominance would be trade, would be money. Okay, so each and every country in this world is running for their profit, is running for the support of their business partners, for their corporates. No one is interested for peace. No country in this world is there for creating peace. If there is peace, there would be no weapons in the world, there would be no war, there would be no corporates. Keep this thing in mind. There would be never peace in the world. There would never be a peace in the world. There is no motive of United Nations. United Nations is just for the sake of peace. There won't be peace for any time in future when there would be no war, when there would be no war in any corner of the world. Keep this thing in mind, that wars are only made for the business profits. Okay, and what was the complete giveaway for from these two conflicts, so that you can build an understanding that wars are always waged for business purposes. Wars are never meant to be cultural, religious, or ideological differences. Wars are never meant to be for these things. Wars are only waged for business purposes, for profit purposes. Okay. World leaders have portrayed this thing, and media have inserted this particular opinion, inserted this particular ideology in in our minds, in the minds of the common people, so that you should be entangled in this opinion, in this ideology, and you should not come to know about the things which are going behind the scene. Okay, people should know this thing, that yes, if there is a war between Israel Palestine, there is a war between Jews and Palestine. So that you should make a very unbiased opinion. You stand with either with Israel or either with Palestine, and you start supporting them. But you don't know that what are the what are the tactics that are used by the governments of every country behind the scenes. Do you think there is no reason? Just for humanity, India gave aid to the Gaza Strip region. Do you think it is just that when this matter would settle down, India would gain its momentum as their true friend, and again, and we would be a good trade partner with? them. Okay, now many of you would ask, like, where should we start our geopolitics, which book you would refer. So I would say that there first of all, if you're starting geopolitics, you need to start with Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. It is a very I would say deep book with very intricate details of geography and with geopolitics. As I mentioned, that if you need to understand it with the perspective of history, you need to understand it with the perspective of geography, then you need to understand why is there a conflict. So there are 10 chapters in Prisoners of Geography, which tells you very specifically why there is conflict in any part of the world. Okay, so this is one of the books which I would suggest you to start, and as you start, you would start gaining momentum, and you would be interested in the world of geopolitics. So this was the story of Israel Palestine conflict and Russia Ukraine conflict. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for joining this exploration week workshop. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and I wish you a very happy Diwali. Thank you.